Welcome in to the Throwback Thursday edition of Main Street Sports Today, presented by our friends at the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Wade Needley sitting in the saddle. Joined shortly, don't you worry, folks, joined shortly in just a moment by our trusty colleague, Mr. Mo Patton. Big show lined up today. Once again, it is the Throwback Thursday edition of the program. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's staying safe. Perhaps most importantly, hope everybody's staying dry as this Throwback Thursday edition of the show is off and running. Big show today. They're all big, but today especially big as we will cover a wide variety of topics. We'll go from preps to pros, and we will really get into a lot of it. In our second hour, we will have a couple of guests. One you've already may or may not have seen, but if you didn't see it, John Glennon, our buddy at the Nashville Post, will join us. It is opening night of the NFL Draft, and the draft taking place this year in Green Bay. The Titans on the clock. They'll pick number 1 overall. Maybe around 7:15, look for the Titans to make their selection. But we revisit a conversation with our good buddy John Glennon at the Nashville Post. That'll be at the start of the 3 o'clock hour. But wait, there's more. More football, as a matter of fact. As Ben Arthur from Fox Sports will sit down, and we will talk about the Titans, who they will pick tonight. I think everybody kind of has a feeling of what's going to happen in terms of the Titans draft selection, but we'll also get a feeling for what that means. What does Cam Ward do for the Titans? And then who else do the Titans surround Cam Ward with? So we will get those answers from our pal over at Fox Sports, Ben Arthur. Always good to catch up with Ben. We'll also get into kind of some other nuances in the draft, including a certain quarterback that could be sliding. Will he get his name called tonight? Will he have to wait till tomorrow? How many quarterbacks will go in this first round? We'll get those answers from Ben. Also, we'll get into the grab bag, including some local flavor on that. Got a ton of stuff to get into in our grab bag. So that kind of is a preview of the second hour. We'll obviously talk Braves. This day in Braves history will come your way here a little bit later inside this 2 o'clock hour. And we will also celebrate Coach's Corner and our Custom Stone Handlers Team of the Week and our TOA Athlete of the Week. Joe Williams of the Williamson Herald will be in the saddle with us to kind of break things down as we get ready there. So, like we said, it is a jam-packed show today. It is going to be fun. It is going to be exciting. Looking forward to a good one. And we've kind of teed it up and teased it up. And so as we get ready to there he is. Mo is in the house. Can you hear us, Mo?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can. Yeah, man.
Well, there we go. Hey.
Welcome in, baby.
Hey, it's good to be here. Absolutely. On a wet Throwback Thursday. I'm sure that you have handled much of the preliminaries. So where do we need to go? What do we need to do?
I say let's rip and run. Let's rip the Band-Aid off this thing and get into the rundown, partner.
Let's do it then. Yesterday's results and today's schedule right here on the rundown.
This is the rundown.
Lock and load, boys and girls. It is the Thursday rundown, and you know what that means. We start things with our scores from across the Preps landscape last night, and we start on the baseball diamond, where it was Baylor picking up a 9-6 win versus Rossview. Lipscomb Academy and CPA, they got some game in, and then Mother Nature got involved. 3-3 was your final there, or is your score. I would assume they're going to resume play there at some point, but 3-3, Lipscomb and CPA are tied at the moment. Beach with a 6-1 win versus Gallatin. It was Culleoka versus Huntland, and Culleoka winning that game 5-4. Lawrence County with a 5-3 victory versus Franklin County. Lebanon topping Laverne last night 1-0. Loretto 6, Mount Pleasant 0. It was Brentwood with a 5-0 win versus Ravenwood. And capping our baseball scores from last night, Watertown all over Smith County, 15-1. Got one little old softball game to tell you guys about, but it was a big win for Beach as they knock off Gallatin on the small diamond last night. 12-4 was your final. MLB scores from last night, yesterday for the Braves at least. It was Atlanta 4, St. Louis 1. Houston defeated Toronto last night as well. 3-1. We talked about the Nashville Sounds. They were washed out due to severe weather last night. They're going to attempt to play at least some baseball today as part of a doubleheader. We'll have more on that a little bit later. But no Sounds game last night as the series attempting to resume this afternoon.
Real quick, flag football from yesterday in Williamson County, a 9-game schedule was reduced to 2. Brentwood with a 28-6 win over Centennial. Independence defeated Ravenwood 19-13. Everything else will be rescheduled at some later date. Today's baseball, and again, check your local listings. Forewarned is forearmed. Nolensville is scheduled to play at Franklin. That's a 4:30 start. Also at 4:30, allegedly, Pearl-Cohn is at Glencliff. Maplewood goes to Hume Fogg. Lewis County hosts Hampshire. CPA is at Lipscomb. I would imagine they will pick up that game from yesterday and then play the regularly scheduled game if they meet at all today. Richland is at Loretto at 4:30. 5 o'clock starts for Summertown at Eagleville. Clarksville at McCracken County of Kentucky at 5:30. Westmoreland is set to play at DeKalb County. East Nashville goes to Liberty Creek. Lebanon is at Sycamore. Hendersonville goes to White House Heritage. 6 o'clock starts for Mount Juliet at Clarksville Northeast. Lawrence County at Columbia Central. McKenzie goes to Houston County at 6. Oakland hosting Riverdale. Zion Christian is at Providence Christian. Smyrna goes to Rockvale. Upperman plays at Station Camp. Stewart's Creek hosts Cane Ridge. At 6:15, Greenbrier is at Fairview. 6:30 start for East Hickman at Battle Creek. Also, Watertown is at Gordonsville at 6:30. Maplewood is at Hume Fogg at 6:30. So I guess that's a doubleheader then. 4:30, 6:30 for the Panthers and the Blue Knights. Also, Dixon County is at Montgomery Central at 6:30. Hickman County travels to Mount Pleasant. Giles County goes south to Rocket City of Alabama at 6:30, and Portland is at Springfield. At 7, Martin Luther King is at Lawson. Wade, you're on mute.
Now we're ready.
There we go.
Check your local listings before you strike out for a softball schedule today, but we do have games cranking up at 5 p.m. Loretto is on the road at Battle Creek. Hillsboro is traveling to John Overton. Culleoka will visit Mount Pleasant. Lewis County is at Santa Fe tonight. Columbia visiting Warren County. Fairview will be on the road this evening at Waverly. Greenbrier will visit White House to cap our 5 p.m. start times. 5:30 showdowns for Riverdale at Baylor. Creekwood will be at Camden Central. Westmoreland will be at Clay County. Murfreesboro Central Magnet is at Lawrence County. At 6 p.m. now, Zion Christian will travel to Marshall County. Coffee County is set for a road trip to Spring Hill. Clarksville Christian will be at Kenwood. The Nashville Lady Knights will visit Laverne. Wilson Central also scheduled to visit Laverne. So show up at Laverne. You might get a game. Not sure versus who, but make sure you check it out there. And also at 6, yes, again, Wilson Central at Laverne. 6:30 showdown tonight. Rockvale is at Oakland. And this is a game that keeps getting moved further and further back. A makeup from Monday, but Tullahoma is scheduled to come to Giles County. Originally set for 6. They're now pushing it to 6:30. Adam Hansen and Mark Mize will broadcast that one on Pulaski Citizen Live tonight. Check us out at PulaskiCitizen.com. Capping our softball slate for this evening, Cookeville at 6:30 will travel to Smyrna.
Boys soccer action. It's 5 o'clock first touch for Providence Christian at Columbia Academy. Also, Lebanon is at Smyrna. Donaldson Christian travels to Zion Christian at 5. Cascade is at Murfreesboro Central at 5:30. At 6, it's Culleoka at Richland. Also, Wayne County is at Battle Creek. Macon County goes to Good Pasture. Adamsville is at Loretto. At 6:30, Green Hill is hosting Middle Tennessee Christian. Macon County is at Liberty Creek, and Riverdale goes to Warren County. At 7, White House is hosting Springfield. Siegel is at Blackman. Coffee County goes to Columbia Central, and we have no time for Cookeville at Stewart's Creek, but those two are scheduled to play. The Cavaliers coming to the Red Hawks. Game 3 of the NBA opening round Western Conference playoffs. We've got the Oklahoma City Thunder coming to FedEx Forum, taking on the Memphis Grizzlies. That's an 8:30 tip. You can see it both on TNT and on FanDuel Sports. And as we mentioned, at 5:35, the Nashville Sounds and the Durham Bulls will attempt to play game 1 of a doubleheader over at First Horizon Park. It is Throwback Thursday. It's also Belmont night. So good luck to those striking out for that one at 5:35. Ladies and gentlemen, that is your rundown. Your top story brought to you, as always, by the fine folks over at Piggly Wiggly in Neely's Mill in Columbia. Be sure and check out their delicious daily deli lunch items available from 11 a.m. until 6 p.m. Also, their hand-cut meats and everything is cost plus 10% at the cash register. Piggly Wiggly, Neely's Mill in Columbia, bringing you our top story. And after we left the air yesterday, it was announced that 2024 Pro Football Hall of Fame inductee Steve McMichael had passed away at the age of 67. McMichael was diagnosed with ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, back in 2021, and his induction was really a touching moment last summer when a bunch of his former teammates gathered in his hospital, well, not his hospital room, but at his home to induct him. Tough situation, but he battled again since 2021. Made his mark with the Chicago Bears as part of that Super Bowl team back in 1985, but spent 13 years with them, played also a season with the Patriots and one with the Packers. I can't imagine playing for the Bears and for the Packers, but yeah, exactly. But certainly a legend for a legendary franchise. And, you know, you never like to see anybody pass away, but dealing with what he was dealing with over the last portion of his life, it's tough for the family, but it's tough to watch somebody go through that as well, I'm quite sure. So Steve McMichael, again, legendary defensive tackle for those Chicago Bears teams, was up for induction about 10 years ago and did not get in, but finally did this past summer. Again, 3 years into his battle with ALS, and it's nice that he was able to, you know, be around for that. Very deserving, obviously.
Yeah, and you know, I remember visiting this story last year. It was a touching ceremony, and one that really kind of tugged at your heartstrings, whether you were a fan of Steve or a fan of the Bears, or I suppose the Packers, as you mentioned a moment ago. But yeah, great career, part of that vaunted squad for Chicago, and man, it does not make it any easier. No, but it also maybe in a way, hopefully, for an illness such like this, hopefully the family is able to find some sort of level of peace during this time. It's been a real battle that's kind of played out publicly to a large extent, and man, our thoughts and prayers do go out to the family there.
College football star at Texas was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame in 2010, and after football, if you're a wrestling fan, you're familiar with him as well. He was a four horseman along with Ric Flair. And I mean, he had the personality for that. So it was nice to kind of see that revival of him in the public eye in the wrestling ring, in addition to his exploits on the football field. Yeah. Steve McMichael again passes away at age 67, and
that's how I knew him, Mo. I didn't know, I knew he was a great player, but Mongo, I mean, he's the WCW US champ for a small time there, and yeah, member of the Four Horsemen, him and Flair and Anderson. I mean, that's and a commentary career that was fantastic as well. That's kind of how I got to know Steve McMichael, which speaks to the type of character and the type of personality that he was so seamlessly able to transition into that role. So yes, his football exploits were fantastic, but even the wrestling community, especially those old WCW fans, are certainly in mourning today. A lot of tributes, including one from the Nature Boy on social, going out to Mongo last night.
Absolutely. Let's take a break here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Again, it is Throwback Thursday. At the top of the second hour, we'll be throwing it back to a conversation that we had with John Glennon as we get ready for the first day of the NFL draft. So stick around for that. Stick around when we come back from this break.
Step into the Lionel retail store at Opry Mills, Nashville, and you'll be captivated by all the magic of the 123-year history of Lionel trains. Whether you're already a train enthusiast or just getting started, Lionel will energize your love for trains. NASCAR fan? Come check out your local Lionel station to learn all there is to know about model trains and die-cast NASCAR collectibles. Visit nashville.lionel.com or call 615-455-9399.
Custom Stone Handlers supplies over 600 distributors and suppliers with quality stone products. Along with Riverstone, we produce and distribute over 100 building, landscape, and other bulk products. Our goal is to provide quality products, service, and partnerships to ensure our customers' success. We firmly believe the measure of any person or company is how you treat other people and customers. Give them a call at 931-490-4990 or visit CustomStoneHandlers.com.
You're seeing the signs too, right?
What signs?
Again, to Throwback Thursday here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. I am the frozen Maurice Patton, and I don't know how to get that fixed, Mark. You may want to take me down for a second, but again, Thursday, and as we typically do on Thursdays, it's time for Coach's Corner, and I believe we are joined by the esteemed Joe Williams of the Williamson Herald. Joe, are you there?
Esteemed?
Esteemed, absolutely.
Yeah, that
Thank
fits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. For an old man, makes me feel good.
Well, Joe Williams is with us, and I'm kind of here. But Joe, Joe struck some nerves yesterday with a column that ran in the Williamson Herald, and to set this up, apparently word has come out from the state legislature that they and the TSSAA aren't playing particularly nice these days, I guess. And so the state legislature has decided that perhaps they just need to take on governing high school athletics. Among others, Joe didn't think that was a great idea.
No, I don't. I still don't.
Okay. Well, I didn't expect it. I didn't expect it to have changed since you wrote your column, but I mean, just kind of
Well, here's the thing, Maurice, and you know, I kind of got wind of this last week that this was kind of rumbling around the Capitol, and I laughed it off. I thought, this is so crazy, this ain't never going to happen. And lo and behold, earlier this week, it comes out, yes, that's actually what they're thinking about doing. So, you know, it struck me a couple of comments that a couple of the legislators made, such as we don't think that the TSSAA has been honest or straightforward in their discussions with us. And I thought, really, you guys are saying that? It's just, of all the things that the state legislature needs to be worried about right now, this ain't one of them. And the bad part is, this is not about good government. This is from what I have since learned, is a situation where apparently, and I'm not going to mention any names until I can confirm. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
one of the legislators who's so involved in this had a student athlete who got either denied a transfer, couldn't get around it, it wasn't going to work. So now they've decided that there needs to be a one-time free pass rule. Wasn't an issue until this legislature's, till his ox got gored, it wasn't a big deal. And now all of a sudden it's this huge deal. Well, they went to the TSSAA. TSSAA said, no, we don't want to do that. So as soon as they said no, now the state legislature wants to come in and take them over. I'm sick of this crap. We got roads that need to be fixed, bridges that need to be fixed. We need to cut down on sales taxes. And on top of that, for goodness sakes, if you're worried about schools and education, fully fund every school district in the state like you should. Then you can worry about who's going where, why. I'm on my soapbox, man. I'm sorry.
No, that's kind of what we brought you for, Joe, because, I mean, the TSSAA is not without its warts.
Oh, gosh, no.
And I don't think anybody would try to say otherwise. But I think to one degree, I think sometimes the devil that you know is better than the devil that you don't know. For another, I think that there are a lot more subtleties and nuances involved with high school athletics than folks that only deal with it in passing realize.
Well, I'll tell you the same thing that I said in my column yesterday. Look, I've seen both ends. I have been under the disciplinary procedures of the TSSAA before, back 150 years ago when I was playing, our team was. And I've seen them show tremendous compassion. I have hated the TSSAA, and I have loved the TSSAA. And as I get older, it tells me they must be doing something right. If you can go to both extremes. Do they have issues? Yeah, they have issues. Do they have things they need to change? Yes, they have things they need to change. But as you say, it's the devil because you know what you're getting a hold of. I chuckled this morning. One of the state senators, I've got to look him up, but Dr. Adam Lowe apparently found the column and called it from the good old boy, paid for by the good old boy something group.
Oh, Lord.
And I thought, brother,
if you only knew.
You want to talk about
clearly he didn't read the article.
Well, apparently, no, I think he did. He just didn't like it. And to say it's paid for by the good old boy network. Come on, this is the state legislature. Which I
don't think he did read it, Joe, because at one point you mentioned in that article, I am a member of the party that is in the supermajority in the state legislature.
Well, technically, yes. But that doesn't matter anymore. And that's a whole story for another day. But I am more and more convinced that, at least in Williamson County and probably the state, we need a third party. Because I think if we had a third party, the other two would collapse from the folks in the middle of both of those parties coming together.
Yeah.
That's a political statement. That's just, But yeah, you're right. I mean, here's the problem. Here's what's happened. Everybody, all these folks went up there, and I said this in the column, under the theory of less government is better. Oh my God, I love that idea. Local government governs best. Oh my gosh, that's a great idea. And once they got there, they wanted to tell everybody else how to do it. They wanted to tell Memphis how to do their things. They wanted to tell Nashville that their council was too big. You know what? It's not your concern. That's a local issue. High school sports is a local issue. Now, granted, it's a statewide local issue. And yeah, they got problems, but to just get rid of an organization that has been a good steward and made some mistakes and made some really good moves in the last 100 years is just ridiculous.
Joe, my immediate question or thought is, all right, so let's say that this does come to its fullest fruition. Are there any other parallels or clear examples of other states that have enacted something like this that we can maybe kind of look to and see what their results have panned out? That would be my first question.
Look to the state of Florida.
That's usually not a good place to be, as we've talked about with high school athletics in this state.
Look to the state of Florida. Guys, it's the wild, wild west out there. I use the example, there was a kid here in Williamson County several years ago who played football for high school A. And on
It ain't
Friday
been
night,
that long ago, but go ahead.
Manhattan. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. But he started for high school A on Friday night. On Saturday morning, the moving van shows up. They move, and he enrolls Monday at high school B. He makes his practices, and the next Friday night, he starts for high school B when they play high school A. Now, I will grant you, Williamson County is a bubble. God, I know. I mean, there is no question about that. We're a bubble. People here, not me, not Mo, but there are people here who can afford to do that.
Yeah.
And they do. But here's the thing. That was a legitimate, bona fide change of address. That met the rules. So, what do you do? But that's not the case everywhere. And these folks are looking for this one-time transfer. And look, here's the problem. Right now, the way things sit, Tennessee's going to be almost a Wild West state. It's wild West in Florida. But it's, just look at what's happened in the state of Florida, and it'll tell you everything you need to know. It's kind of like democracy. It's kind of like our government. Is it perfect? No, but it's the best thing going. TSSAA is kind of the same way. Is it perfect? No, but it's absolutely the best thing going, and it beats the devil. I had to check myself there. It beats the devil. Yeah, thank you. It beats the devil of the alternative, turning it over to the state. Who needs another bureaucracy at the state?
Here's what's crazy about this whole thing, Joe, is that the TSSAA is being boiled down to transfers.
Yeah.
For everything else that they deal with, state championships,
the
whole gamut of everything that they deal with, transfers is where we're at. That's the sticking point. That's the reason for a potential takeover.
Well, and it's simply because of one, and somebody's ox got gored, and under most circumstances, we'd call this abuse of power. But I don't know if anybody's got the courage to stand up and say that. If I can confirm what I think I know, I probably will. Of course, my days are numbered anyway. I'm old. I don't care. That was the other line. From the good old boy, get off my lawn, old folks. That's what Dr. Adam Lowe. I've got to look him up. I'm going to answer him. This is also the guy who got caught on a hot mic talking about all the hot moms that showed up at the Capitol. So, the guy obviously knows what he's talking about.
Joe Williams of the Williamson Herald joining us here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, as we discuss, the pluses and minuses of the TSSAA and the state legislature potentially taking them over here on Coach's Corner, which is typically devoted to high school sports. And so we use a little latitude in bringing Joe on to discuss this, but it's something that needs discussing, and Wade had something.
Well, I was going to ask Joe, is the transfer issue, is that the only issue that has been cited thus far, kind of at the political level? And I'm curious if the legislature kind of maps this out. Do they have any sort of roadmap, or is it just we're just so early in this process they don't even have anything necessarily proposed just yet?
I think they're so early in this roadmap they don't have anything proposed. They see a problem, but they have no solution.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
that's how it appears to me.
Yeah, but they got a year to work on it now. The session is over.
Right.
They've got a year for lobbyists to all get together and work on it. It is so frustrating sometimes to understand how you don't want to see sausage made. You just want it on the biscuit in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically what the legislature does, is it makes sausage. And sometimes you have to watch it happen. And the biggest deal is they don't have, you got one or two who want something done, and they don't care how it has to get done. They don't understand how it has to get done. They don't understand what they're going to have when they're finished. They just want to be able to say, my kid can go where I want them to.
You've mentioned one coach. You've mentioned one political figure by name and, in singularity. Is this something that you feel maybe there's more? Is this a groundswell, or is this a deal where herding sheep or cattle just lined up and everybody's just going to follow the leader person? Is there going to be opposition to this? I guess my question.
Oh, I'm sure there will be. The one I mentioned is Senator Adam Lowe, and he was, like I said, that was just a Twitter thing. That I think the groundswell, if you want to call this, is coming out of the House of Representatives, and in many cases that has become a sea of lemmings. You have leadership, and whatever they say goes, or you're gone. We'll just get rid of you. I think. It's getting into the political aspect, but I think you're beginning to see more and more, especially at the end of this session, where representatives began to represent their constituents and not their party. There were a few breaks along the way. So, I think this is one of those that you're going to see breaks. And all this gets tied. You can tie all this back to school vouchers, et cetera. Won't even go there. But the whole concept of this is, well, we want to be able to say everybody gets a one-time pass. Well, okay, if everybody gets a one-time pass, what happens when they need a second one-time pass? All of a sudden, that grass that was greener turns out to be artificial turf, and you can't eat it.
Correct.
Now what? Here's the thing. It's the rules are pretty simple, and part of it goes back to this organization being 100 years old, which was, back in the days of neighborhood schools. If you lived in this neighborhood, this is where you went to school. And as I said in the column, that's a story and a concept for a whole nother day. But I come back to, I think that's part of it, in that we don't necessarily have neighborhood schools anymore, per se. At least not like we did. The neighborhood is so much larger. The schools are so much larger.
Joe, I think, as you mentioned vouchers, I think some of this is attached to the voucher situation, in that once students have an opportunity to move from a public school with a voucher to a private school, they want to be sure that they can be eligible when that takes place. So I think there's some relationship between the voucher situation and the eligibility situation.
I think
seemed to make sense that it would.
Yeah, without a doubt. So my question becomes, what happens after the first year when the voucher covers 15% and the family figures out that the other 85% they can't afford? Now the kid's got to go back to public schools. Do you get another free pass to go back?
No, it's a one-time pass.
And why do you get a one-time pass? Going in, here's the deal.
It's a slippery slope at the very least. And, as you mentioned, this legislative session is over. And maybe before they reconvene, maybe some cooler heads can prevail on this. It's only being discussed, but I think that the fact that it's being discussed is enough to put you on edge about it.
Well, but a few years ago, Maurice, the issue of spending public money on private schools was only being discussed too. Especially when you are not fully funding all of the public schools that are out there. And again, I know Williamson County lives in a bubble, but I'll use that as an example. The schools in Williamson County have this great reputation. Typically, they're in the top 10 nationwide year after year after year because they got dedicated people and hardworking teachers and good students. However, as you probably already know, the per pupil state contribution to our local schools is about 60% of what the normal is supposed to be, because they say in Williamson County, you have the economic ability to make that up. So we're going to take your money and give it to somebody else.
Yeah. Basically, you're getting punished for being good at what you do.
Yeah, I think, Robin Hood. That's it. Robin Hood.
Yeah.
Joe, what response, if any, have we got from the TSSAA thus far, whether it's publicly or kind of through back channels that you may have heard?
They are being very quiet. They're smart enough to understand the battle that they're in. I don't think I don't think you'll see a public response from this unless it gets further down the line. I'm sure they have their folks also working behind the scenes. I think it's going to take a grassroots groundswell from media, parents, teachers, athletic directors, principals, to the state legislature to make them understand. And I go back to, look, I understand that TSSAA has their issues. God, I've had them. Yeah, I mean, as I said, I've had with them before, but it's not like they haven't tried. And one of the issues was, students don't even have a say. They don't even have a seat. Athletes don't have a seat at the table with the TSSAA. My God, they just named their new 20-member student athlete commission or committee. Okay, here's the difference. You saw a problem. They found a solution. You're not giving anybody, the legislature's not giving anybody these solutions. They're just throwing it up against the wall to see if it sticks.
No one consulted the TSSAA too after they spent all that money on celebrating 100 years and go out and change their logo either, Joe. I mean, they could have at least saved them some money before they went out and rebranded themselves to celebrate that, right?
Well, I guess it's like some other things. It's kind of like having that 50th wedding anniversary. By the way, somebody wants a divorce as soon as the party's over. I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of like you. They could have. And this, I think this has been ongoing for a while, very quietly. Like I said, I think somebody at the Capitol didn't get the answer they wanted. So like a petulant child, they threw down a gauntlet.
It's a mess. And again, it doesn't need to be. And hopefully, again, cooler heads will prevail on this. But it's certainly something to be aware of. And it's going to be discussed a lot until it goes away or until it actually happens. But Joe Williams of the Williamson Herald joining us here on Coach's Corner on Main Street Sports today. And if you've not seen the column, be sure and go to, what is it, WilliamsonHerald.com? Sure.
WilliamsonHerald.com, look under sports.
And check it out because, Joe makes some points and he makes them as only Joe can. So be sure and check that out. Joe, again, we appreciate you taking some time with us this afternoon, and I'm sure we'll be catching up.
My friends, honored, always honored to be with you. Honored.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Joe.
Y'all have a great afternoon.
Yeah, man, you too.
Before we wrap up this segment, and I'm still frozen, but before we wrap this up, we need to get into some awards. So let's start with the Custom Stone Handlers Into Win Life Team of the Week. Besides the military, there is no greater team building experience than athletics. Custom Stone Handlers invites you to get in the game. Again, our Custom Stone Handlers Into Win Life Team of the Week is the Columbia Central Boys Soccer Team that stopped a 5-game skid with a pair of victories last week, both in district play, defeating Lincoln County 4-1 and Spring Hill in a big cross-county rivalry 2-0. So a couple of big wins for the Lions on the pitch. They are our Custom Stone Handlers Into Win Life Team of the Week. Congratulations to them. Our TOA of Columbia Athlete of the Week, meanwhile, is Columbia Academy sophomore Gunnar Skelton. In 4 games, he was 6 for 13 with a pair of doubles, 8 stolen bases. The speed merchant, Gunnar Skelton. 8 stolen bases, 7 runs scored, 3 RBIs. On the mound, threw a 2-hit shutout with 11 strikeouts. CA went 2-2 on the week behind the Vanderbilt commit. So congratulations again to Gunnar Skelton, our Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia Athlete of the Week, and to the Columbia Central Boys Soccer Team, our Custom Stone Handlers Into Win Life Team of the Week. Let's take a break here on Main Street Sports today as we continue with Throwback Thursday. At the top of the hour, we'll be throwing it back to a recent conversation we had with John Glennon of the Nashville Post, getting ready for the NFL draft, where the Titans are still on the clock. And when we come back from this break, we'll be talking a little baseball. So stick around after this.
At Delta Dental of Tennessee, we know our success begins and ends with providing superior quality service, and that includes serving those who need it most. This year, we're celebrating 25 years of giving back to the community we call home. Delta Dental, along with our Smile 180 Foundation, supports Tennessee's dental colleges and oral health education, children's hospitals, free and reduced cost dental clinics, and other like-minded charities. Here's to the next 25 plus years of ensuring healthy smiles.
Zion Christian Academy at zioneagles.org or 931-388-7531. You can schedule your appointment to visit their beautiful campus. Again, zioneagles.org or 931-7531 to schedule your visit today.
A game without a crowd is just a scrimmage. A performance without an audience is just a rehearsal. Without your presence, high school sports and the performing arts aren't possible. Ensure that these essential extracurricular activities continue to enrich the lives of students in Tennessee. Purchase a ticket to your local high school's game or performance.
This message presented by the TSSAA.
April 24th, 2011, Nate McLouth singled home a pair of runs in the top of the 10th inning, and Brian McCann added an RBI base hit as the Braves defeated San Francisco 9-6 in extras. The win completed a three-game series sweep, marking the first time Atlanta had swept the Giants on the road since 1998. Jason Hayward and Dan Uggla each homered in the victory, with Ugla's solo shot in the eighth tying the game at 6-all. That was this day in Braves history. And anytime we can get former Columbia Central star Dan Uggla in a TDIBH, it's a good day. So, Wade, you're on mute.
Hadn't chimed in yet. I was just melting and marinate there. Yeah, Columbia Central standout. You know, Dan Uggla. Some definite highlights. A few lowlights for the Braves too, but some definite highlights and kind of good to reference. It just makes you kind of harken back to old days.
Absolutely. As we mentioned on yesterday's show, the Braves coming back from an early 1-0 deficit. St. Louis scored in the first, and that run stood up into the seventh before Michael Harris, second, out of the leadoff spot yesterday, had an RBI single, driving in Nate Allen to tie the game. And in the eighth, Eli White with a crushed bomb, a 3-run shot in the eighth for the 4-1 victory for Atlanta there to complete a 5-1 homestand, sweeping Minnesota over the weekend, getting 2 of 3 from St. Louis. Again, Harris in the leadoff spot yesterday, 3 for 4. Maybe that'll get him going because he's kind of been up and down, as have most of the Braves, but they're on a little bit of a roll right now. Bryce Elder with a big performance, 6 innings pitched, 1 run. Got the no decision, obviously, but as we talked to John Denton earlier in the week, and he talked about that St. Louis offense, particularly at home. But to hold them to 1 run, they got 10 the night before in a 6-run win. So, Elder, giving the Braves kind of what they needed coming off of that bullpen game on Tuesday. So a big performance in the Wednesday day game before they go on the road. They are off today. They go to Arizona for 3 and then to Colorado for 3. So see how things go with that. Meanwhile, speaking of winning big, Houston sweeps Toronto, finishes that series off with a 3-1 victory yesterday. Christian Walker staying hot with a solo shot in a 3. Houston scored all 3 of their runs in the second inning, and Ryan Gusto, 5 2/3, giving up only 1 run, striking out 6. Nice performance there.
Yeah, good win for Houston. Talked about it on the show yesterday. Pleasantly surprised by what I saw out of them in this series. Thought they would probably drop 2 or 3. Instead, they not only win 2 or 3, they win 3 of 3. And Texas lost last night, so that log jam gets even a little more log jammier. Texas is up on Seattle by a game, up on Houston by a game, but then you got the Angels and the A's hot on everybody's heels at 2.5 and 3 back. So, like I said many times, the AL West is going to be pretty ugly. It's going to be akin to the NFC South. But if you're in the mix and you're a fan of that division, it's going to be fun to watch. Maybe not the most pleasant win-loss records will be produced by the end of this season amongst everybody, but for now, it's entertaining.
And I think, this time of year, entertaining isn't necessarily a bad thing. So,
oh, yeah. I mean, you got to have something to hold you over till September and October when they really start counting.
Yeah. You mentioned Texas. Josh Peterson has not been very entertaining for the Rangers. Was 0 of 41 entering last night's matchup with the Athletics. 0 of 41. The record for consecutive hitless at-bats is held by Chris Davis, who went 0 for 54. Now, this is particularly unexpected from Jock Peterson since he signed a 2-year, $37 million deal with the Rangers over the offseason. Has not exactly lived up to that deal. But in the 9th inning, he came on as a pinch hitter and drove a ball over former Vandy Boy outfielder J.J. Bleday's head for a double to break that 0 for 41 slump. Did not help a whole lot. Like you said, Texas falls to Texas falls to the Athletics in that game 5-2 at West Sacramento. But, if you're Josh Peterson, you had to be glad to see a ball actually hit the grass somewhere.
Yeah, Jock was celebrating a little bit. Kumar Rocker, however, was like, hey, I could have used a little more run support because he gave up 5 earned runs yesterday. It has not been a great start to the former Vanderbilt phenom. And Texas, falling back. The A's are scrappy. And we talked about it, especially playing in that weird kind of borderline bandboxy park. Mm-hmm. Balls flying out. A couple of dingers, one for each team yesterday. So in a low-scoring game, that proved to be kind of the difference.
It's going to be interesting to watch Rocker and Jack Leiter and how they come along, because I guess the Rangers have decided, we're going to sink or swim with these 2 guys at the back end of the rotation. We feel like the talent is there. Just got to get the experience, and sometimes the only way to get it is to go out there every 5th day.
Yeah, that's what's going to be fascinating, right? I mean, if Texas was, already 10 games under 500, you'd be really okay rolling these guys out and just, hey, let's just get you some seasoning and bring you up to speed. But as the season goes along, especially with Rocker, that kind of continues, you will wonder how long does the leash get as the wins become more critical, at least for this season, than the development. Texas will have an interesting balancing act on their hands later in the year if this kind of continues.
Yeah, that is interesting, but at the same time, you got to feel like if they're there right now, they must not feel like they've got a whole lot of alternatives either. But yeah, 1 2/3, 5 earned is not a good look for Kumar. That was a tough one. So didn't stick around very long, taxing the bullpen, that kind of thing.
it'll be interesting to keep an eye on that development. The Rangers are 14-10, like you said, and leading the AL West. So maybe that's enough to kind of hold things at bay for Kumar for the moment.
I think so. Yeah. And I mean, unless, when we start getting closer to the trade deadline, I think that's maybe, a situation where, hey, maybe they go all in on somebody else. Feels like everybody's kind of safe for right now.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I know nobody's going to feel sorry for the Dodgers, but Blake Snell played catch a couple of days ago. He's already on the injured list with shoulder inflammation, but after playing catch a couple of days ago, didn't feel great, according to manager Dave Roberts. So he won't be picking up a ball for a while. Snell, an off-season acquisition. He's made 2 starts. One of those was against the Braves when they roughed him up a little bit. He's given up 7 runs in 9 innings. Only 2 of those were earned, but he's walked twice as many guys as he struck out. 8 walks, 4 strikeouts over 9 innings. Velo is down, and again, diagnosed with shoulder inflammation, and it's not getting any better from him being shut down back on April 6th. So that's not good news for the Dodgers, who have basically 3 starting rotations on the IL. They have 12 pitchers that aren't available. Now that's counting Ohtani, who is playing but is not able to pitch at this point after that elbow surgery that he had. But Snell is out, Kershaw is out, Tony Gonsolin is out with a back issue. Gavin Stone is out for the year. He's had shoulder surgery. And they've got 3 guys who have had Tommy John surgery that are on the IL and out for the year. So that's tough when you've spent $400 million and still you're trying to piece together a rotation with bubblegum and chicken wire.
Right, and that's the point I was getting ready to make. When we see all these acquisitions in the offseason, it's easy to just look and say, oh, man, they're just assembling a super team and they'll go 162-0. But really, more likely is what we're seeing here. You're signing a ton of players and you're building more depth. Your backups are better than, a lot of starters for most teams, but that depth is proven out to be critical for these guys because of the injury concerns. Don't know that we'll get them back at that full, Evil Empire super team level, maybe until later, especially the second half of the season. But for now, they're kind of, just scraping by. And unfortunately for the rest of the league, them just scraping together a roster is still, like I said, better than most are able to produce at the moment.
Yeah, they're scraping by at 16-9. They're a game behind San Diego, who we discussed yesterday in the NL West. But I mean, that 16-9 is still only 2 teams have more wins than the Dodgers. That's the Mets at 18-7 and the Padres. So no other team in the National League besides the Mets and the Padres have more wins than the Dodgers 16. But they have started 8 different pitchers. I mean, they've had 8 different starting pitchers, already through 25 games. That doesn't bode especially well.
No. We talked about it on the show too yesterday. With the numbers down to 3, Mo, Padres got shut out yesterday. So it's just the Astros, the Red Sox, and the Brewers, who just scored in the top of the first. So the Brewers are safe, extending that last to be shutout streak.
That's pretty wild. As we mentioned during the rundown, Sounds rained out yesterday against the visiting Durham Bulls. They will try to play 2 this evening, 5:35 start for game 1. It's not raining right now, at least not in Franklin. I don't know what it's doing over close to First Horizon Park. So maybe they
clear my way. Yeah, maybe they clear my way. We had a massive deluge from about 10 a.m. until 2 here locally. They're going to try and get 2 in. Maybe they get 1 and you just see what happens, but it looks like we're clear the rest of the night.
That's a good sign and certainly something that they want to hear. Again, it is Throwback Thursday, and I wonder, since they got rained out yesterday, if it will be windbreaker night tonight.
Man, that'd be nice, right? I do give them props. Everybody kind of does this, but they are very proactive. Hey, if you had a ticket to last night, you're admitted tonight. And if you had a ticket last night and you can't make it, you can come down, you can exchange it. We'll get you another game later in the season. So kind of trying to be as accommodating as possible because, Mother Nature not cooperating the last 24 hours.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think the Sounds are probably kind of used to that. If you follow, again, high school athletics in this area, it's just something that happens in this area. You got to stay loose because rain can wreak havoc with everything. As we mentioned, Williamson County flag football yesterday, they only got 2 of 9 games in, so it happens more than folks would like, obviously, but Mother Nature, every now and then, she's got to assert herself and let you know who's in charge. So, again, Sounds trying to play 2 today, starting at 5:35. Let's go ahead and take a break here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. It is Throwback Thursday. When we come back, we'll be throwing it back to our recent conversation with John Glennon of the Nashville Post as we get you ready for tonight's NFL draft. Stick around.
Hi, I'm Dr. Vilay Saisuka, CEO and founder of Premier Foot and Ankle Centers of Tennessee here in Murfreesboro. We offer foot and ankle care from ingrown toenails to diabetic foot wounds. We also fix ankle fractures and things like that.
Call us today to schedule an appointment. We look forward to seeing you.
Because here at Premier Foot and Ankle, we believe that
the journey begins with happy feet.
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50-plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Custom Stone Handlers supplies over 600 distributors and suppliers with quality stone products. Along with Riverstone, we produce and distribute over 100 building, landscape, and other bulk products. Our goal is to provide quality products, service, and partnerships to ensure our customers' success. We firmly believe the measure of any person or company is how you treat other people and customers. Give them a call at 931-490-4990 or visit CustomStoneHandlers.com.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
Now, speaking of wacky, it's Mr. Wahoo himself, University of Virginia graduate John Glennon of the Nashville Post, joining us here on Main Street Sports Today. JG, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, guys. How are you doing?
We're doing well, man. Appreciate you taking some time with us. What prompted me to reach out to you yesterday afternoon, John? You've got an article up on NashvillePost.com. Credit Titans for correcting mistake made in Latham evaluation. Team saw first-round pick as left tackle, but wound up spending big at same position. Getting J.C. Latham back over to the right side, it feels like a logical move since that's where he played his entire collegiate career at the University of Alabama. Maybe it was a little bit of an over projection, thinking that left, right, what's the difference? But when you had the folks sign off on it that did with the Titans, you felt a little bit more comfortable with it. My question, John, is was it a mistake or was he just a rookie in a different league?
I tend to think it was a bit of an overprojection, as you referenced there. I think the idea was that J.C. Latham was going to be the left tackle, not only for his rookie season out of necessity, but long term. And, you know, of course, one of the first reasons is normally you wouldn't draft a guy who you consider like a long-term right tackle with the 7th overall pick of the draft. You know, left tackles, generally speaking, are a little bit more valuable, tend to go a little higher in the draft than right tackles do. And I think that was the case for the Titans. And I don't think, you know, the Titans planned on drafting J.C. Latham and then spending $82 million on a left tackle the following year, you know, to fill that same left tackle position. So, you know, as I wrote, I think, you know, credit to them for not trying to pound, you know, what might be kind of a square peg into a round hole again and again and say, you know, if it was Brian Callahan saying, no, he's our left tackle, we're going to stick with that. You know, instead they're saying, okay, he was not a terrible year for J.C. Latham at the left tackle, but you know, maybe less than what was expected. So I think good on them for saying, let's move him back to where he played every single, or played say 95% of his snaps at Alabama. Let's bring in Dan Moore, the free agent, who has played all of his snaps in his career at left tackle. And you know, you make a couple positions better that way. Now, how good is Dan Moore going to be at left tackle? That's another topic as well. But yeah, I think they picked J.C. Latham thinking he was going to be a long-term left tackle. So the move over, to me, seems like a little bit of a recalibration there.
And John, I'm kind of curious, you know, is this also, I guess I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. By moving Latham, does it feel like the Titans kind of also realize, hey, his ceiling at this familiar position is much higher? Yeah, we could have maybe got by, but we kind of would have been shortchanging a little bit. And then you'll take what you get from the left. I mean, is it kind of, I'm trying to just figure, I guess, the calculus about making this whole thing kind of work across the line, because it feels like if you maximize one side, you're okay with, you know, mediocre, no disrespect to anybody on the other side. But if you're kind of going to be average on one and average on the other, I'm curious where that balance maybe lies in your mind.
Yeah, I think what they're hoping is that they have made both tackle positions better with this. You know, obviously right tackle was a disaster for the Titans last year, revolving door. You know, they went through 3 or 4 different guys. Most of the time it was Nicholas Petit-Frere and just really, really struggled last year. So I think that the Titans are saying with this idea of signing Dan Moore, left tackle, are saying, okay, we can now be strong at right tackle. You know, with J.C. Latham there, who was outstanding as a right tackle in college at Alabama. And I think their hope, of course, is that they're also improved at left tackle by signing Dan Moore. I'm not sold yet whether Dan Moore is a better player at left tackle than J.C. Latham might have been moving forward, but that is their hope anyway, because he certainly has experience there. Some of the numbers last couple of years were not great for Dan Moore. You know, he allowed 12 sacks last year, had some rough pressure years in the AFC North, but they're hoping that they get Bill Callahan doing some work on him and things will get better. I think that's the big question, though, is did they get better at left tackle? We know they got better at right tackle now that Latham is there.
Yeah, you feel like, if for nothing else, just by default, they got better at right tackle, just because it was such a revolving door or turnstile, however you care to refer to it, at right tackle. John Glennon of the Nashville Post joining us here on Main Street Sports today. All of a sudden, the offensive line kind of falls into place if Lloyd Cushenberry is healthy, I guess, right?
Yeah, I think a couple ifs. One, as we just talked about, is Dan Moore an upgrade at left tackle, which remains to be seen. And then, yeah, the other, Lloyd Cushenberry, recovering from the Achilles. I think Brian Callahan, told reporters at the owners' meetings that he thinks, Lloyd Cushenberry should be ready for training camp, but not quite certain yet. So that remains up in the air. If he's not ready, they've got Corey Levin, who's been with the organization for, closer to a decade now, that would step in and probably start there. But certainly the right side, wow, the right side looks so much better. I think their best free agent signing was Kevin Zeitler at right guard. He's not a young guy. He's 34, 35 years old, but his numbers are still really good. Last year, he brings some element of leadership, comes from a winning organization in Detroit. I think he's going to be a real boost there. And as we talked about, J.C. Latham at the right tackle, I think is going to be much, much better than what we saw last year. So still some ifs, but overall, a line that was a serious weakness last year certainly seems to have the potential of being better this year.
When you talk about Zeitler coming from a winning organization in Detroit, I mean,
times have changed, haven't they?
Big time, clearly. That's kind of nuts to hear it put that way. But you talked about the injury status of Cushenberry. L'Jarius Sneed sounds like he's in a better spot from a health standpoint. Treylon Burks sounds like he's in a worse situation health-wise.
That is accurate. Yeah, I think, L'Jarius Sneed, I think Brian Callahan's comments down at the owners' meeting seemed to sound pretty confident that L'Jarius Sneed, who missed all but the first 5 games last year with a hamstring injury, is going to be ready for training camp. Not 100% mark it down, but seemed confident in that regard. And that, of course, obviously makes a tremendous difference in the secondary, in the cornerbacks room. If he comes back, if he's at full speed, that's a potential shutdown corner that's returning, and especially after you release Chidobe Awuzie, another veteran presence there as well. Treylon Burks, boy, this guy can't catch a break. Obviously has not lived up to expectations when he's been healthy, but even worse for him, he hasn't been healthy that often, and he is still recovering from a torn ACL he suffered last October. And Brian Callahan sounded like Burks would not be ready for camp, maybe at the start of the season. But, again, that's another full off season that Treylon Burks is missing. We think back to his very first off season after he was drafted in the first round. And I can remember watching literally his first drill session in the rookie mini camp when he had to walk to the sideline, and that began the entire process of, okay, he wasn't ready in terms of conditioning. He also had allergies, asthma. That really limited his initial offseason going into the league. And then so many different injuries and setbacks over the years. I can remember a couple years ago up in Minnesota when they practiced up there, he hurt his knee, and that held him out for almost 2 more weeks again during training camp when you get a lot of practice work done. So he's just had a difficult time staying healthy for any length of time and really getting in any kind of consistent routine chemistry with quarterbacks. It's been a challenge for him. So 4th year, of his deal, and if it doesn't happen this year, could be the end for Treylon Burks with the Titans.
And John, is everything magnified with Burks in particular, given the trade that was made ahead of his arrival?
I think you're 100% on there because that was probably the kind of the defining moment of the decline of the Titans, if you will, was that trade of A.J. Brown, when John Robinson, apparently didn't feel like he was going to be able to re-sign A.J. Brown or didn't want to re-sign A.J. Brown to a long-term deal, one of the two. and decided trading him was the best move, and sent him at the draft to Philadelphia. And of course, A.J. Brown has had tremendous success with the Eagles, of course, won the Super Bowl last year. And then in the next breath, basically the Titans said, okay, see you later, AJ. Our number one, our first round pick this year is going to be Treylon Burks, a big physical receiver out of Arkansas. And it was not too hard to connect the dots and say, okay, they just moved AJ Brown. Here comes Treylon Burks, same type of body, same type of reputation. Clearly they want him eventually, at least, to be the number one guy, the way AJ Brown was. Unfortunately, lightning did not strike twice, and AJ Brown, who was a second round pick, has turned out to have a tremendous career, still in the midst of a tremendous career. And as we said, Treylon Burks not only injured a lot, but even when he's healthy, it just hasn't clicked, and the production has not been there.
John, we've talked perhaps more than I think in any other offseason about the Titans and special teams. Is that a function of anything? And kind of just give us a 30,000-foot view. Is this active, seemingly more active for any particular reason, or is this kind of business the Titans are doing here?
Yeah, it's certainly they had plenty of work ahead of them after finishing so near the bottom in so many different categories and special teams last year. So they've made a lot of changes, starting with special teams coordinator. Gosh, all of a sudden I'm losing track of his name, but John Fossil is the new special teams coordinator, Bones Fossil, and highly experienced guy. I think that's a great addition by the Titans to fill that role. And we've seen changes at the various positions too. We've seen them part ways with Ryan Stonehouse, the punter, bit of a surprise. But some of the numbers went down when he came back from his injury last year. They added Johnny Hecker, longtime punter. They made what I consider a little bit of a questionable move in adding Joey Sly, the kicker, as opposed to re-signing Nick Folk, who was unbelievably accurate for them the last couple of years. Joey Sly younger and probably a more powerful leg, but if that leg isn't accurate, what good is the power?
And that's basically what they just said to us and releasing Stonehouse, right?
Yeah, in some ways, yes. But I think part of the problem with Stonehouse was that power and the old phrase, outkick your coverage. I think there were probably too many times last year that happened. His hang time, Ryan Stonehouse's hang time went down a little bit. Combine that with the fact that the special teams coverage was terrible, and you've got a pretty good recipe for a lot of big returns, which the Titans allowed last year. So, yeah, those are some moves. And then you add they re-signed, I think, a really good re-signing, cornerback Justin Hardy. Justin Hardy may never see the field as a cornerback, may strictly be special teamers, and that's okay. He was a Pro Bowl special teamer with the Jets. He did well in about half a season's work with the Titans last year, so that's good. And then the other special team addition, James Prochet, wide receiver, last with the Browns, I believe. He's been with the Browns and the Ravens. But he should be an excellent punt returner. That was a sore spot last year, as Jaquan Jackson, the rookie, just put too many balls on the ground and eventually lost his job there.
John, as we've looked at a lot of these off-season additions for the Titans, it feels like a common thread for a lot of those, and I can't remember if it was something that we spoke with you about the last time we had you on, or if it was somebody else that we were talking Titans with. I apologize if we're being redundant, but it feels like availability and durability has been a big theme, either outwardly or at least kind of subliminally, with some of these signings over this offseason. Are they a little gun shy from an injury standpoint at this point and just trying to get folks that they feel like have a better chance of staying on the field?
I think so. I think there's truth to that. Of course, obviously we're also talking two different regimes, over the last two off seasons in terms of signing players as well. But yeah, there were certainly some players signed, didn't necessarily have big injury histories, but maybe because of the age, they were more susceptible to injuries, perhaps you could say. Chidobe Awuzie, missed about half the year. Of course, L'Jarius Sneed came in the trade. He only played 5 games, despite the fact he didn't have much of an injury history in terms of missing games at all. And there were some other players too. Tyler Boyd, the wide receiver, frequently, was less than 100%, missed a few games. And the list kind of goes on. There were some others as well. And Lloyd Cushenberry missed most of the season. But again, there wasn't a big injury history. Nevertheless, as you say, a real trademark of a lot of these new guys that they have rarely missed games over the years. And that's probably perhaps best illustrated the safety they signed from Carolina, Xavier Woods. I don't think he missed a single defensive snap last year. It was over 1,000 snaps that he played on defense. But you look at other guys like Dan Moore, the left tackle. We can debate his talent level, but what he has played in nearly every game those 4 years. And other guys too, Draymond Jones, the edge guy, Cody Barton, the inside linebacker, Kevin Zeitler, the guy we talked about at right guard. All those guys have very little injury history. So, of course, with the Titans luck, all of a sudden everything will change. And, these guys will be, walking on crutches within a few weeks. But certainly the hope is that they follow the path they've been on so far and remain healthy and reliable. And I think most of these guys, too, from what I see and hear about them, the Titans wanted to bring in some veterans that have leadership qualities. And I think we're seeing that with at least some of these guys. That was a point that Mike Borgonzi made early on, that he said in Kansas City what they wanted to do, especially early on as they were trying to turn the Chiefs around, was bring in veterans and set examples for younger guys on the team.
John, we got the draft coming up. It feels like a ton of chatter about Cam Ward. I'm also kind of curious. Number one, I guess, give us your read on that. But number two, what are the other immediate needs in your mind beyond the number one overall pick for this team?
Yeah, in terms of Cam Ward, I certainly think I had thought, probably earlier in the offseason, I would have leaned towards them trading back and not taking Cam Ward or another quarterback at number one. The thought being that maybe he just wasn't, how to say, I guess number one.
Yeah.
What's that?
1-1. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're risking, especially with a quarterback, if that doesn't work out, boy, what a setback is, because obviously there's only one of them that plays. And if you don't get your guy at number one, you're setting the franchise back. But to me, I think the Titans, from what they've said and their actions, to me, seem to be more and more impressed with Cam Ward. It's not only what they have said. I think you'd expect this kind of thing from an organization that certainly at least wants to make people think that they're taking Cam Ward at number one, because how else would you build up a big potential trade haul for a trade? But I really think, there's some things that they like about him an awful lot. The arm strength, the ability to really make explosive, successful plays downfield, the ability to kind of make plays off script, which is a real strength of Cam Ward. Leadership stands out well. The fact that he has gone to 3 different schools, kind of turned programs around at each of them, gotten better himself as well at each of those 3 schools. I think there's an awful lot to like about Cam Ward. So now I lean towards them taking Cam Ward at number one. I'm not chiseling my selection in stone quite yet, because I still think there's a possibility, they could trade out, and they could say, look, we're not convinced absolutely positively he's number one franchise guy. So, we're still building, or, we're still looking for extra draft capital. So I'm not completely ruling out a trade back at this point. But in terms of other needs, I think, probably the top one that stands out right now for me is certainly wide receiver. And I certainly think that probably goes up that much more if you take a rookie quarterback at number one. You've got to give him some options and some weapons. Right now it's Calvin Ridley, and there's a huge drop off after that to right now, Van Jefferson, who's a nice guy and a local talent, and should probably be a nice, maybe a fourth or fifth wide receiver, but certainly nothing that's going to scare opponents too much. And they've got some younger guys after that, with some upside, but it's more hopeful, I think, for those guys right now. So I think you need, whether it's through, another wide receiver, maybe some more become available in free agency or the draft. I think you have to address that first. I think edge rusher, certainly right after that, even though they got Draymond Jones and Lorenzo Carter for a little bit of depth. I still think, you cut Harold Landry. While that gave you a great amount of salary cap, you still have to replace a guy who's had at least 9-10 sacks for 4 years in a row. He had 9 of the Titans' 32 sacks last year. So, you need some help there. So those are the top two positions. And I think probably after cutting Awuzie, they probably need another cornerback there as well. If Snead comes back healthy, they're kind of set for a good 3 or 4 at the top, but there's some question marks there. So it shouldn't hurt to have another one, whether that's via the veteran market or in the draft.
John Glennon of the Nashville Post. You can also hear his podcast, First and 10. He and the illustrious David Beauclair joining us here on Main Street Sports today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. JG, as always, we appreciate it. And
sure, thank you.
We will catch up with you.
That sounds good. I appreciate it.
Thank
you, sir.
Hi, I'm Riley, a certified physician associate here at Premier Foot and Ankle Centers of Tennessee. We have a couple locations, Murfreesboro, McMinnville, as well as Franklin. We treat people of all ages. We're excited to get you back on your feet and hope we can help you today.
Call us today to schedule an appointment. We look forward to seeing you.
Because here at Premier Foot and Ankle, we believe that
the journey begins with happy feet.
You're seeing the signs too, right?
What signs?
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50-plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Zion Christian Academy at zioneagles.org or 931-388-7531. You can schedule your appointment to visit their beautiful campus. Again, zioneagles.org or 931-7531 to schedule your visit today.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily, as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
Throwback Thursday continues here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. I'm Maurice Patton. That's Wade Neely. Great to revisit that segment with John Glennon. Always good when we can get JG on for a little bit. And to keep the Titans talk going as we sit here, 3 hours maybe from the first pick being executed by the Tennessee Titans, we're joined by Ben Arthur of NFL on Fox. Mr. Arthur, how's your Thursday?
It's been good. How about you guys? Good to see y'all.
Yeah,
Good
man.
to see you, man. It's been a while. Yeah, it's going well. I was doubtful as to whether or not my track meet was going to come off today that I was going to cover, but sun's actually peeking out, so maybe I got a shot. We'll see how it goes. But hey, obviously Green Bay is kind of the epicenter of the NFL for the next few days, starting today. And Cam Ward, it will be a miracle if it's anybody other than Cam Ward to the Titans at number one at this point. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it seems pretty clear at this point, just from everything we've heard and seen. And even just, I was at the Titans pre-draft press conference the other day, and Mike Borgonzi, Brian Callahan, Chad Brinker, they wouldn't confirm. Obviously, they can't confirm if a said player is their pick, but I mean, they basically entertained questions about Cam for 15 of the 30 minutes. I mean, it was it's as clear as it can be without being official. And I just think it makes so many sense from so many different standpoints when it comes to the need, to the leadership he could bring, the upside that he has, his resume. And I think it's pretty obvious at this point. I mean, never say never to something crazy. I mean, that's what the NFL draft is for. And if we always knew what was going to happen, then there'd really be no need for all this fanfare and whatnot. But I think at this point, it's pretty clear, and he should be the guy for the Titans at number one.
It feels like they are trying to do everything they can to make his transition as smooth as possible, even as late as last night, signing Tyler Lockett, the former Seattle Seahawks receiver, to a 1-year, $4 million deal. Talk about the significance of bringing Lockett into that wide receiver room that, besides Calvin Ridley, is bereft of talent. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, but that's totally fair to say. And yeah, with Tyler Lockett, he's a veteran receiver who you can have in place to help groom your rookie quarterback and get him comfortable and kind of show him the NFL receiver's perspective of things on the field. And I think right now, you mentioned the lack of talent, especially young talent. But I think right now they do have three experienced receivers in Calvin Ridley, Van Jefferson, and Tyler Lockett. All those guys are 28 and older. And of course, that's not who you want your top three guys to be necessarily as kind of we go on here and into the season. But having three guys who've kind of been through it, so to speak, to help bring along your rookie quarterback. And of course, I still expect the Titans to draft at least one receiver, maybe in the middle rounds at this point, just because of Tyler Lockett. Maybe doesn't make it as pressing, but I do expect them to add another young guy in there. But yeah, to make your rookie quarterback as comfortable as possible, you want to get him as many weapons as possible. We've seen so many situations where teams have brought in young quarterbacks and they didn't bring the right support, whether it was via offensive line or receiver or both or coaching or just regardless of kind of what it is. And so I do think ultimately, like I said, Tyler Lockett does bring that veteran presence, and he's worked with a number of quarterbacks too. Like he's worked with Russell Wilson. He's worked with Geno Smith. I covered him when I covered the Seahawks several years ago, and he just has such a good knack for finding the football, for finding the holes in zones. And he's so small, but he's so good at avoiding contact. And he doesn't take unnecessary hits, and I think he'll be super useful for Cam Ward.
While you mentioned Ward, Ben, kind of in your mind, what is the ultimate upside for Cam Ward, and kind of realistically, maybe what can Titans fans expect out of a guy who is going to go number 1 overall in this year's draft?
Well, I think first of all, we need to remind ourselves that he's going to need time, right? And of course, it would be great for Titans world if he has a Jaden Daniels or a CJ Stroud type of rookie season, which we know just isn't the norm, even if a guy does turn out to be good. So I think number one, there has to be some patience. I think once we get to like maybe year 2, second half of year 2, and he maybe finds a groove, I think that's when we could really start truly assessing a guy. But I think in the long run, to answer your question, he could be a plus starter. I think top 10 quarterback in the league. I think you look at everything he has, the arm strength people have talked about, the creativity in terms of being able to throw from different arm slots and make those difficult throws. Not just attempt them, but actually complete them, and not in such a reckless way. He has a feel for the pocket that I think is really unique. He has a strength. Even though he's not the biggest guy in the world, he does have a lot of upper body strength. And so you look at a lot of his film at Miami, and he's shaking D tackles or edge guys, blitzers like off of him, and he could kind of scramble and make something happen out of nothing, even if he's not super athletic and he doesn't have the speed and just the eye-popping athleticism. He could get those yards in kind of scramble drill type situation. It kind of reminds me of Patrick Mahomes a little bit. I'm not saying he is Patrick Mahomes, but in the ability to get 2 yards here, 4 yards here, 3 yards here. And I mean, there's so much to like about him. The ability to layer throws over defenders over the middle. I mean, there's so many things to like. And I think we're really going to see kind of what Brian Callahan is made of, right? I mean, the big reason why they brought him in was to kind of groom a quarterback, right? And it didn't necessarily work with Will Levis, but of course we know his pedigree working with Joe Burrow and other guys in the past. I mean, now you have a guy coming in who is just a top tier talent. And are you actually going to be able to convert that potential into reality? And it's going to take a lot of patience, a lot of work with the coaching staff. But I think ultimately, like I said, he can be a plus starter in the NFL in a few years' time.
You mentioned Will Levis there, and I'm just real quick, I'm curious, Ben, what biggest difference other than the slew of turnovers, obviously from Levis, biggest difference in your mind? How is Cam Ward different in your mind from the guy that was under center last year for the Titans? Or what extra intangibles does he maybe bring, I guess, a better way to say it?
I think the biggest things are the pocket presence and the ability to the instinctiveness. I think he plays a lot smarter in the pocket and reading the field. I mean, they both have the big arm, the big play ability, the wow play ability that they both. And I know at first this was a reason why people weren't so high on Cam, and at least in the Titans world, was because of the propensity at times to be a little bit reckless. And I think people made that comparison just with what we've obviously seen from Will Levis, but with what separates Cam from Will, I think it is those things I mentioned. I think it's the feel in the pocket and being able to get out of would-be sacks, and then the instinctiveness, the processing ability. I think he processes a lot faster than we've ever seen from Will. And you know, that's going to be super important, right? When a defense maybe takes away a certain part of the field, or they're confusing you pre and post snap. I think Cam has an ability to sort through that in a way that we haven't seen from Will. And so I think those are the biggest differentiators in my mind.
Ben Arthur of Fox Sports joining us here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, as we get ready for Cam Ward to become a Tennessee Titan here in a few hours. You mentioned Callahan being brought in to work with a young quarterback, the fact that he is actually handpicking this quarterback, how much more crucial does it make it for this to work?
It's everything. It's paramount, and I'm really interested to see kind of how much of a leash that the Titans give him, right? Because, and when I say how much of a leash they give him, I'm referring to Brian Callahan, because we've seen time and time again with young quarterbacks, just their development just gets completely wrecked because they're changing coaches and they're changing coordinators and they're changing schemes and doing all these things. And we know the year that Brian Callahan just had, maybe being on a little bit of a hot seat, even though it was just year one for him, but going 3-14, a lot of people thought that he might be out the door with Ran. And now you keep,
or instead of Ran.
What was that?
Or instead of Ran.
Or instead of, yeah, or instead of Ran. And so I think the Titans decision makers, right? The Titans brass, I think there's gonna have to be some patience here. And obviously we're gonna want to see strides, right? And we're gonna want to see this trajectory, positive trajectory for Cam early on. But if the Titans struggle, like I don't want to see, I think this almost gives Brian Callahan an extra year, even if it doesn't even if the win-loss record doesn't necessarily have the jump that many people want, but for the sake of actually developing a franchise quarterback, I think that's something we really need to be looking at here. And so, but as far as Brian Callahan goes, and as I said earlier, like he's done this before. I mean, they had Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. He knows everything that comes with a number one pick, especially, and the pressures that come with that, and making sure said player comes along. And so I'm really fascinated to see how that works, how their relationship goes early on, the push and pull of a young quarterback head coach relationship. But yeah, I think for me that the biggest thing is what I'm fascinated to see is kind of the leash that the Titans ownership really gives Brian Callahan, just knowing that you're bringing in a rookie quarterback like Cam Ward.
You mentioned, we talked about Tyler Lockett. A lot of thought was that they would go receiver in the second round. Yeah. Do you feel like this changes that? And if so, where would you expect them to go instead, position-wise, maybe even player-wise?
With Tyler Lockett coming in, I do think it takes the pressure off. I think I brought this point up earlier, just in that it's still a need, right? It's still a need, but with bringing in a guy like Tyler Lockett, that does take a little bit of the pressure off. If there is a guy, though, that you have as like the highest rated guy on your board and he's a receiver, I think you still take him in the second round. And we did hear Mike Borgonzi, Titans brass, talk on Tuesday about how they're not going to be drafting for need. And I think that's so important, because with a team like the Titans that has so many holes, so many needs, right? That we need to get out of just thinking 2025 and thinking, oh, we need a starting corner, or we need a starting edge rusher. Like they need to be thinking 2, 3, 4 years down the line. And so even if that means, I don't expect this to happen, but even if it's like a cornerback in the second round, just because Roger McCreary's in a contract year and you don't know the whole L'Jarius Sneed situation between his health and legal troubles, like you don't know. So my point being, like, that they should, and they've talked about this, just kind of going best available and not necessarily going by need, because as you said, Mo, they do have so many needs. We know the positions that are a need more than most: quarterback, edge, receiver. But I don't think that there's necessarily needs to be a pecking order in which they take guys, especially I don't think a 32-year-old Tyler Lockett at this stage in free agency is going to change their draft plans, so to speak. So yeah, I mean, I think if I were to take a guess, I think maybe it's edge in the second round if kind of all the dominoes fall into place. But I still wouldn't be surprised if a wide receiver still ended up being their guy.
You know, obviously Cam Ward is one. What happens behind that? League wise, I'm sorry, not exactly Titans wise, but where do you see the draft going 2, 3, 4?
2, I think Travis Hunter. 3,
Cleveland?
yeah, to Cleveland. 3, the Giants. I think they'll go Abdul. I think they'll go Abdul Carter. 4, Will Campbell from LSU. And then 5, I think with the Jags, it's kind of where it gets interesting because no one seems to know what the Jags are doing. They're kind of a wild card with their new regime coming in, right? New coach, Liam Cohen, new general manager, James Gladstone, 34. I mean, really young, new brass, and we don't really know what they're thinking. We know that they want to support Trevor Lawrence. And so whether that's Ashton Genty or Ted McMillan or offensive line or even address defense because their defense was just dreadful last season. That there's so many. I think 5 is where it gets really, really interesting. And then that kind of determines the next like 6, 7, 8 picks. But then the back half of the first round is so interesting because we've heard so many people talk about how there aren't that many like blue chip prospects in this draft. Like I've heard a lot between like 12 and 15 and the consensus is that at the back, like there isn't going to be, at least the way it's viewed, right? Like this could all change as soon as games are played, but at least the way it's viewed now at the back half and at the back half of the first round to like the early part of the third round, the difference in the player like isn't that much. That's the consensus of like the personnel world. And so I think after the Jags, and then that's weird. But then at the back half of the first round, I think it gets really, really interesting as well. So like I said, I think I feel really good about those first 4 picks. But then after that, it's just like all hell can break loose.
And so we don't really know where the Jaguars are going. Indianapolis is at 14 right now. Preliminary thoughts on where they go, just as we discuss AFC South in particular.
Yeah, I think it's got to be a pass catching tight end. So, and honestly, I don't know if like I know Colston Loveland out of Michigan and Tyler Warren out of Penn State. Those are the top 2 guys. I honestly don't know that those guys will be available at 14. That's how highly the NFL community views those guys. And then the third guy, the third tight end, maybe that would be somewhat of a reach. And so if you can't get a tight end, I mean, I think it gets interesting. Maybe you go defense that spot. If you can't go tight end, you maybe truly go best available. So that could be an edge guy. It could be more help in their secondary, which I know they've addressed a lot in free agency, but I could see them go in that direction too. So yeah, I think the Colts are kind of an interesting spot too.
While we got you down that rabbit hole, give us an idea what the Texans might do late in that first round with that 25th pick. We've talked a lot about their offensive line. Is that something they immediately need to address in your mind?
I believe so. I think they got to go offensive line. And I think we all know the history, right, with just O-linemen. Like your best chance of getting a hit on an offensive lineman is in the first round, at least with like tackles, right? And I think that should be zero. That should be a focus for them. But Nick Caserio likes to wheel and deal on draft night. Like I don't remember the exact number of trades he's done, but he's up there like at the top of the league in terms of whether it's moving up like he did for Will Anderson a couple years ago or moving back. Like he likes to kind of bounce up and down the draft board. And so if they don't get like the offensive, if there's not an offensive lineman that they like, I could see them trading back to get some more draft capital and yeah. So I think, yeah, they'll be a fun one to watch too.
Real quick, let's backtrack. You mentioned a couple guys that both terrify me of the thought of them with an offensive-minded coach in Jacksonville, whether it's Genty. There's a lot of steam, though, that the Bears maybe trade up and grab him. But it seems like if Genty or Tet end up in Jacksonville, man, Trevor Lawrence has obviously kind of been on a downward trend these last couple of seasons, but he instantly gets a real weapon if it's one of those two guys, I think.
Yeah, I think the Jaguars next season, they could get back in the mix of just being a high-powered offense for real, and their defense still has a lot of issues. it could be a situation where they need to score like 28, 30 points to win games. But yeah, you look at what Brian Thomas Jr. could be in year 2. That's scary to think about. Whether it's Genty or McMillan to go in that skill group, and they still have some guys there. I know Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram aren't there, but they have some younger skill guys too that are promising. And yeah, and just having Liam Cohen, who's we know what he's done just offensively and helping quarterbacks, right? Like what he did with Baker Mayfield and in Tampa. And I know for him, the run game is going to be really paramount in elevating, and that's why I could really see them going Genty too, because with Liam Cohen last year, the Bucks jumped from 32nd to 4th in rushing, 32nd to 4th. And that was with a 4th round running back and
Bucky Irving is a great back, but you feel like Genty's got more top end level, I would think, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so you can imagine that Liam Cohen's brain is working a little bit, especially when you know you have a threat on the outside like Brian Thomas Jr., and then you have a back in the backfield like Ashton Genty. Like, what do you do as a defense? And that just makes Trevor Lawrence's life so much easier. So I think potentially the Jags could be a lot of fun to watch on offense.
Ben, does Shedeur Sanders fall out of the first round?
I don't think he does. And I know that there's been chatter about that over the last like 24 hours or so. But regardless of the grade that people in the personnel community, scouting community actually have on him, and I know a lot of people actually have a 2nd round grade on him, just because of the value of the position, he's going to go in the 1st round, even if it's like back half of 1st round. I think I've kind of stuck with like Steelers being the team for him, and I very much think that that's going to be his landing spot. But I just don't see him having like a Geno Smith type of slide. So I think Shedeur stays in round 1, probably just at the end of the 1st round, though. It's kind of wild, though, the discourse around him, right? Like, I remember just a few months ago, he was in contention with like Cam Ward or even Abdul Carter for being the number 1 pick, and all of a sudden he's just slid down like in a way I haven't seen in a little while. So I think that's fun or interesting. But yeah.
Similar question, but different. Is Shedeur Sanders QB number 2 in this draft? Whether that's tonight or early in the 2nd round. Does Jackson Dart gets via trade or some other method get snagged in your mind early?
I've actually predicted that 4 quarterbacks are going to go in the 1st round. I still think that's going to happen, even if Cam Ward is probably maybe the only guy who should go in the 1st round at this point, just with the way people have talked.
Yeah.
But with the value of the position, right? And I think just with the crop of guys this year, I think teams may be more willing to just kind of take a flyer and see what a guy could become. And that's why I'm high on Jalen Milroe, because of the traits, and you get him in the right situation, right? Like a team with an established quarterback who's probably going to be there at least 2 more years, an offensive-minded head coach, so you know there's going to be stability, and you just have him develop. You don't throw him out there like the Colts did Anthony Richardson, but you just let him develop. I think Jalen Milroe could be a guy who could be, we look back a few years from now and it's like, wow, he really kind of turned out really well. And so I do think four guys will go in round 1. I think Ward, of course, Shedeur, Dart, and Jalen Milroe. I don't see the Tyler Shu, however you pronounce his name. I don't see that. I don't know why he's kind of being pushed up, but I could definitely see 4 passers going 1st round.
Ben Arthur of Fox Sports joining us here on Main Street Sports today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Ben, we appreciate your insight as always and look forward to catching up with you. People can follow your work. They can find you on X or Twitter at Ben Y. Arthur, and they can find your work at foxsports.com, right?
Yes, sir.
There we go. Ben, we appreciate it, man. We'll talk to you.
Sounds good, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Let's skip our final break. Let's get into the grab bag to close today's show. Let's start with Blades Brown, who teed off about an hour ago at the Veritex Bank Championship out in Texas on the Corn Ferry Tour. This will be his fourth start, I believe, his third start, excuse me, on the Corn Ferry Tour. He played the Club Car Championship earlier this month, followed by the Lacombe Suncoast Classic. 9 under in the first one, 7 under a couple of weekends ago. So hoping to see some improvement there. Broke the top 40. He was top 50. He was tied for 41st at the Club Car Championship. He was tied for 51st at the Lacombe. Made 4 PGA starts, missed the cut in 3 of those. So, we talked with who was the pro that we talked to? Virgil Herring a couple of weeks ago, heading into the Masters. And, it's a steep climb for anybody, making their PGA debut, but particularly for a 17-year-old. So it's kind of starts and stops and that kind of thing. But we'll be keeping an eye on Blades and hope he can put 4 good rounds together this weekend at the Veritex. I cannot imagine being a 17-year-old or sending a 17-year-old out there, but I don't know anybody that's got the talent that Blades Brown does either. So there we go.
He's got the goods, and it's good to see him. They're in a weather delay, so he hadn't even teed off just yet. But the big thing that Virgil did say is stringing together tournaments. Yeah, he was able to sneak into a couple of events with those exemptions on the PGA level. Corn Ferry seems like a perfect spot for him. Play in as many of those tournaments as he can. Yeah, you'll take a 1 or 2 more remaining exemptions into your PGA. And if you get lucky, make a cut or, climb up high enough, that can maybe spur you further. But this is where he can really season his chops is at tournaments like this, whether it's at Lakewood last week or this week at Veritex. It'd be fun to watch over the weekend.
Got to play, I would think. Just get out there and compete. So when Eddie George took the Bowling Green State University job, and when Eric George went into the portal, you pretty well put 2 and 2 together right there. Well, Eric is also at Bowling Green State, one of a number of TSU transfers that have headed to the FBS levels, apparently. Sanders Ellis is now at Purdue. Karate Brinson, the receiver, is at Wake Forest. Offensive lineman Connor Meadows went to Central Florida, and Hadeen Diaby is now at Nevada. So they kind of hemorrhaged some players once Coach George shifted gears and went to the MAC. But they've picked up a handful as well. Got a cornerback out of Nebraska, Sincere Safaula, whose dad, I believe, played at TSU as well. Former MTSU edge James Stewart, and a receiver out of Memphis, Tyson Edwards. So Reggie Barlow is trying to refortify things over there, as I guess they're probably in spring practice or headed toward spring practice as we speak. So, but yeah, Eric George, the latest former TSU player to land at the FBS level, joining his dad up at Bowling Green State.
We'll keep eyes from afar on the goings-ons in Bowling Green over this next season. It's going to be fun. I think a lot of folks are going to be kind of quietly optimistic to see what Eddie can do up there.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's a jump, and obviously you want to see him, see if he can continue the trajectory that he was on with TSU. So see how that goes. NBA playoff action. I guess the biggest thing to come out of last night is Jimmy Butler got hurt as Houston defeated Golden State. Boston and Cleveland both did what you expected them to do, each going up 2-0 in their series. But, this playoff Jimmy situation doesn't bode well for the Warriors, I wouldn't think.
No, and massive bounce-back victory. We still didn't get the absolute most fluid game last night, but the Rockets did bring just enough semblance of aesthetically pleasing basketball to get the win. Much-needed victory for them. kind of felt like in many regards they laid an egg in that opening game, even with the real question, right? If Butler is out, obviously this totally changes the game because Butler and Curry accounted for 70 something of their 90 in the first game. And if this series is going to skew and be won in the hundreds, who is scoring the rest of those points? And the Warriors don't have anybody as they're currently constructed that could fill that void. So in addition to potential Butler being out for a while, that is a potential horrible situation for the Warriors, but a massive victory for the Rockets last night.
The Knicks go to Detroit tonight. That series is tied at 1. Denver goes to the Clippers tonight. That series is tied at 1. As we mentioned in the rundown, Oklahoma City is at the FedEx Forum. Memphis trying to not get swept. What do you think? What are you thinking tonight, Wade?
Well, I'm thinking tickets you can get in for $11 and the spread is 9.5. So, I mean, the fact the spread for OKC is almost as much as the get-in price, that ain't good. Memphis is a prideful city, and that just goes beyond basketball. But I don't know that it'll be enough. OKC is inevitable, seemingly in the West. On the other hand, those two other series are by far the most compelling that in this entire first round. The Knicks and Pistons has been fun. You got Jalen Brunson, just a foul merchant, drawing contact left and right. Speaking of horrifically aesthetic basketball. But it gets the job done, right? And despite all that, Detroit still got a win. First win since the bad boy 2.0 Pistons that we saw in the mid-2000s there. So they have come a long way. And then, we get to inject this series into my veins forever and ever. Give me all the Nuggets Clippers. That'll be a fun one tonight on NBA TV, no less. They kind of tucked away in obscurity, despite the fact it's been the most entertaining series.
You got to find that one, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. On the ice, the Capitals and the Kings took 2-0 leads in their series last night. Dallas defeats who did Dallas? Colorado. There we go. 1-2-1. 1-2-1 in overtime to go up 2-1 in the series. So high drama there in game 3. Tonight you've got Florida at Tampa Bay. The Panthers leading that one 1-0. Toronto is up 2-0 as they go to Ottawa. And Vegas and Minnesota are tied at 1, game 3 in the Twin Cities tonight. Also Winnipeg taking a 2-0 lead in that series, going to St. Louis for game 3 tonight. Any insight, Wade? Any thoughts?
Should be fun. Again, we talked about it yesterday. Florida with Tkachuk back, they are borderline wagon status. And so having him back, if they can steal another win on the road, that will all but wrap that series up. You like Toronto to probably maybe keep the good vibes rolling, but maybe Ottawa shows a little bit of a backbone tonight. The big game for me will definitely be Vegas and Minnesota. That Excel Center will be absolutely rocking tonight when they puck drop, because that is tied 1-1, and Minnesota absolutely dog walked Vegas the last time out. That building will be absolutely scenes, as the kids say, this evening. Looking forward to that one at 8:00.
You know, when you can get a big one like that on the road and then come home, like you said, it creates that kind of electric atmosphere. So it'll be interesting to see what the Wild do at home tonight against the Golden Knights. That's going to wrap up Throwback Thursday here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Come back tomorrow at 2:00. Wade and I will be here. We'll get you ready for the weekend. We'll see y'all then.